Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMolder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And this week we're going to tackle topics like dating a late person, the pains of social distancing, and making a real break in a toxic relationship. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that we are not licensed to do this.
Nor are we professionals that have good equipment. Honestly, I probably am really hard on this mic cord that doesn't work. Anyway, that's a little bit off topic. We are not professionals. We are not trained in this. We are doing the best that we can, just like all of you. So please take our advice as you see fit. We are just here to offer our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs on the incredibly rewarding, but mostly confusing experience that is love.
That's right.
In the time of tornadoes.
Yes, and the time of pandemics.
Hey, Sam, happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. 2 years. Can you believe?
No. Yeah, I can't believe. Happy anniversary. Before we get to our very special guest, I want to ask you quickly, Sam, do you like anniversaries? Is that something that you enjoy?
Yeah, I think anniversaries are fun. I mean, I don't generally go all out, but I do. I think marking the passage of time is important and being reflective, and like the same way we talk about like New Year's. It's like, this is just a time to sit and think like how grateful we are or how far we've come, or even like whether or not we're happy in this relationship. So I feel like it's just like a good reminder for us to be reflective. Yeah,
totally. So what do you normally do for your anniversaries?
Usually we like go out to eat.
And do you record yourself talking in front of hundreds of people?
Yeah, that's how it usually works. Like going out to eat and then like probably getting tickets to like go see a musical or something.
Fun. Yeah, I like anniversaries too, the same way I like New Year's, like the mark of the passage of time. And so here's to Just Break Up, passing some wonderful time.
That's right. This is like officially my second longest relationship. So. Now that we've hit that 2-year mark, here we go.
That's funny. Okay, so y'all, instead of a check-in topic, we are going to have a very special guest. I'm going to invite her onto this Zoom call right now. And as she's getting comfortable, then I'll tell you a little bit more about her. So incoming Zoom magical guest showing up. We have the fantastic Tonya Ingram with us today. Oh my God, Tonya, we're wearing like the same shirt.
Yeah, that's cute.
I can't hear you. Check your audio.
My audio?
Oh, I can hear you now. Okay, sorry. Things are all up in the air in this world. We're late, Tonya, because my mic wasn't working. So now I'm using my computer audio. Anyway, I was just telling the world that you are the wonderful Tonya Ingram. You are a poet, author, mental health advocate, performer / speaker, and your work is amazing, and your advocacy is amazing. And I couldn't say enough about you. But maybe you can tell me and tell our listeners a little bit about you and your work, or like what's important to you. I'm so excited for them to hear your poems, but I thought you could introduce yourself first.
Of course. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Tonya Ingram. I am 28. I'm from the Bronx, New York. A lot of my work, a lot of my poetry is very much health-centered, both physical health and mental health. I was diagnosed with lupus about 6 years ago now. And so a lot of my work kind of centers around just bringing awareness, but also letting other people know that they're not alone in whatever they're dealing with. And so that's been my main focus. I'm also a super fan of The Office. I think Tom Hardy is incredibly handsome. I have his calendar on my wall. And
an amazing actor too.
He's
You're like, talented, sure. Something to look at.
That's pretty much me.
That's great. We've known each other when did we meet? Through college nationals?
Yeah.
I think so, right? Yeah, a million years ago. So, yeah. And you're in LA right now, right?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay, cool. so Sam and I host a relationship advice podcast. And I know you have had your life experience of relationship and or heartbreak, right? That's actually some of my favorite work of yours. And do you have whenever we have guests, which has been very, unfortunately, few and far between, but I like to ask them, like, if they had a favorite piece of relationship advice that they heard or that they've internalized or something over the years. Do you have anything like that?
So yes, my little sister who's in New York, she's 13. She's watching right now.
Yeah.
Hi.
I texted her for advice because at 28, I don't know anything. But I think she's a genius. And so I'm going to read you what she texted me. And she said, "It's always best to communicate with each other and be true to each other because it's good to build a friendship with your partner too."
That is a smart 13-year-old. I love that.
Absolutely.
That is communication is the foundation of all relationships. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So without further ado, I'd love for you to take the main stage. I'm going to make you a speaker view and you do your magic.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to be sharing a few poems about just heartbreak, heart build, and this first poem is actually inspired by Nayyirah Waheed, who is a super inspiration for me. And it's entitled, "When You Fall in Love Again." When you fall in love again, let it be messy, let it be lit, let it be life, let it be the business, the sauce, the shit, on fleek, on God, on everything. When you fall in love again, let it cry your eyelashes off. Let it FaceTime you for hours. Let it explain to your best friends how cute this new person is. Let it give you wild thoughts and a DJ Khaled key to life when you fall in love again. Exclude the memories of your ex. For each time you were gaslighted because they could not love you out of the dark. When you fall in love again, let it harvest a kaleidoscope of butterflies, an oil painting for the stomach drop you get when they text you back. When you fall in love again, let it be avocado toast and farmer's market, the kind of bumbling joy that gets you out of the house, out of a brawl with mental illness. When you fall in love again, let it be passing or forever. A coffee shop crush or a walk down the aisle. Water it, feed it, nourish it. Grow a love you can only give yourself. One earth in a reason to see you as whole, as holy. And that is when you fall in love again. Okay, I'm just gonna keep reading poems. And so this first one is actually a quote that I heard from this awesome person named Mala Nunez. And her quote was, "After the breakup is the glow up. After the breakup is the turn up, the bless up, the up and up, the ultralight beam, the choreography of Yes Queen taught to your body. After the breakup is the growth of your limbs, each part of you closer to the earth, the grand entrance, the main event. After the breakup is the shopping spree at Sephora, the dance classes no longer put off, the mansion of your heart finally able to open. After the breakup, shake it off, the sweat of your ex, the moment you were called crazy for daring to crawl outside of a love that was not a love. After the breakup is the marathon of whatever show gives you the drama you need. After the breakup is a birth of you that was always present, always here, always marvelous in your waking and resting, a you that has learned a new language, a language that puts you first." How to invite yourself to fall in love again. Give your body a name it deserves. Carve the dream into a tree, the dream you keep returning to. Be the tune that reminds you of road trips and sand in between your toes. Study your stretch marks. Call each line a victory, a life you won. Bathe in glitter and no fucks given. Hit snooze on insecurity. Tell anxiety it can't sit with us. Devour what you crave and release expectation. Buy the wig, buy the Taco Bell, buy the gift of being okay with the lonely. Channel your inner Rihanna. Stay hydrated. Allow space for the weeping. Allow yourself the whole phase. Allow acceptance to be its own parade. Plant something. Write a lullaby to the rain, to the sound of washing away, of letting go. Call the homies and preach about the day you learn how to love yourself again. For the next lover, there will be days I forget the measurement of my worth. Days I will dive into the softest parts of myself. Will you know how to hold my hand and play Janis Joplin until weeping becomes the echo? Will you know Lunchables and hand-holding makes the heavy a noiseless song? There will be days I string together memories of the most ugly kind. Memories of ex-lovers with sharp teeth. Memories of those who touched without consent. When you know how to hold me like the world is ending. Like we met under a meteorite with seconds to spare. There will be days my body is not mine. It will need repair. It will need dialysis. It will need rest. Will you run your fingers through my hair while it falls out? Will you trace my bad days and call it patience? Will you love me and love me and love me better than the last mistake I made? I wait for you. But until then, I give myself this magic. This love I call my own. On the days you miss them, climb back into bed, order your favorite takeout, turn on RuPaul's Drag Race on the days you miss your ex. Avoid the photographs, the text messages, the Facebook memories. Remember the first time you met. Were you nervous? Remember the last time they said, I love you. Did you trust it? Remember how they had held your hand during chemotherapy, during breakdowns, during times of unease. Remember the gifts you exchanged, the arguments that stayed too long, the resentment that made a home in miscommunication. Remember when they forgot your name, the way it needs to be said. Remember when they forgot the kind of person you fight to be. It is okay to be the one who got away and who wants to return. Do not regret how big you love. Thunder does not lower its volume out of convenience. So these were all just a series of poems that I wrote after my own heartbreak and having to deal with that. And it was my first relationship and my first heartbreak. So it was a lot to deal with. And I left that relationship back home in New York and I moved to LA. And a lot of those poems were birthed from the breakup and that kind of cycle of emotions, of missing them, of, wanting to move on, the moment you finally move on and you come into your own and you learn how to love yourself. And then what do you want for your next lover? And so those were just all of those thoughts. This next poem I'm going to read was written in my book prior to that one, where I talk about my struggles with loneliness and the opposite of that, which is love, or learning what that means for myself. Here is what loneliness tells you. You are the only one. You are the girl who feels awkward referring to herself as a woman because some part of you is unable to grow into it, unable to launch melancholy to the west and leave it in an ocean. You are the good girl, always the good girl and the quiet kick. You are the girl who finds men who need only to loan your body for the night. You are one night, never morning. You are a house party and shadow and hard hands that know how to travel. You are a girl who travels alone. For poems, for crying, for high. Aren't you tired of writing about faceless men? All who want your words, all of them made of grin, cheek, and game, all of them some kind of actor, of slow exhaustion, slow fading. You are the girl who texts too much. You are made of too much, and so you deserve ignore. You deserve an Uber home. You deserve, but we had a good time, because what more are you made of? What more than the good? It's Anchor, it's Slingshot, it's online dating app, it's aimless run. You are the girl who runs into the same ocean where you left grief before you grew into it, and here is what love tells you. You are yours before you choose anyone else. You are cicada and buzz, loose flannel and cupped green tea. You are soft knuckles, the kind to know warmth like dawn. You are dance alone. You are unafraid of alone. It is acoustic, the rain. It is his name and its irrelevance. It is your name and its blossom. It's awaken. It is run to the ocean, and there is no sadness, and there is no sadness, and there is no sadness. You are growing into a woman who knows her name. That is that. Yeah. I think another component of, heartbreak or relationships is learning how to also find joy, or find your joy, especially coming out of heartbreak. And so this poem is entitled How to Make Room for Joy. I want to put a disclaimer. These poems were written pre-COVID, so please ignore some of the advice. But this is How to Make Room for Joy. Book a flight. Select the window seat. Remind yourself that you belong to the sky and everything beneath it. Grab the basketball and practice your jump shot. Remember that we learn best from the shots we miss. Drink ginger tea. Drink a shot of tequila. Eat all of the sourdough bread. Grab the quilt and let it hug your body. Let it give you a warmth on the days the chill feels impossible to shake. Give yourself light instead. Sit in the garden with nothing but your exhale and a breeze, a brush from the wind. Listen to Jacob Banks. Let the music bring you home. Clip your toenails. Spell freedom with your favorite memory and not an ode to guilt. Put shame on silent. Shower in cocoa butter, bath soap, and patience for yourself. Dance, two-step, pop your back, sweat the insecurity out, polish your nails in the brightest triumph. Remember your body. Remember, hydration is not just about the water we drink, but the water we return to. Find what calls you. Give it your name. Whisper to the earth a secret. Make space for tears, for failure, for confusion. Because after the flood comes the knowing, a validation that was always yours. Yeah. How are we doing on the time? We're good. Okay, awesome. I'm just going to keep going. How to be alone. Find a book, a story made of escape, a story to widen the smile. Leave the headphones behind and wander. Wander into the thrift shop, the flower shop, your heart shop. Spend too many hours in Target. Price your favorite lamp and come back to it. Let it be a reminder that you are worthy of light. Learn the meaning of your name, the one you want to be called. Find a forest and a moment to give thanks. Daydream without restriction. Fart. Sing your favorite Broadway musical off key. Buy a balloon and write about a romance that left you breathless. Then let it go. Make room for a new memory. For a piece that is undeniably yours. Build a fort. Welcome your insecurities. Tell them to rest, to take a break. Pray for a loneliness that does not hurt. Pray for a loneliness like a river, like a stream, like a cuddle, like the last time someone broke your heart, but not your story. Alone is not a chorus. Alone is an encore we give ourselves to keep from fading. How to heal. Think of the heartbreak, the doctor's visit, the day you wished was over. Remember how small the world felt, how easy it was to not return to yourself. Marvel at your hands for everything they open. Light a candle, recite Michelle Obama, make a smoothie, fill it with the fruits of your ancestors with the sweetness worth keeping. Block the account. Do not look at the photo of your ex and their new love at the beach, on the grass, and where you failed. Instead, tell yourself you belong here, to the church of Lizzo and better days. Open the windows and put away the laundry. There is a buffet of possibilities with your name on it, a bed of pillows waiting for your arrival. Healing is not linear, not a competition. It is all we hold sacred, how we call on tomorrow while leaning on today. Ba, ba, ba. So this next piece is really short. It's a series of questions for my ex that I was inspired from Marie Andrew. So it's questions for my ex. 1, when did you know? 2, does it hurt when our song comes on? 3, where is the photo of me on the 4 train holding your favorite book? Did you show them? Did you delete it? 4, can they hold your breath in theirs and call that sacrifice? 5, what time was it when you stopped giving a fuck? 6, did it hurt when I loved you? 7, did it heal when I left you? 8, was it me? 9, can I let you go now? I want to be more than a good fuck. More than my body laid out for the picking, for the feast. I want someone to take me out of my clothes and my depression. I want to sleep alongside them, knowing I am not their morning shame. Not a woman who is usable but recyclable, good for now but not good for the next day. I want more than what you can put inside of me, for what can enter and leave so quickly, so fast out the door. It calls me an Uber before I put my shirt back on. I know the signs of my heart. What exhausted, what good loving I can offer. I want more than crying over another them, telling my friends the ex ain't shit, but still having to hold loneliness like a lover who has yet to leave. I want more than the excuse of it's me, not you, when it really screams I am selfish and cannot admit it. I want to be a storm you dance in, not one you watch from the inside of your room. Comfortable and still have water by my downpour. Leave me to my peace. One where you do not interrupt if you do not want to stay. How to survive today. It's the small things. The extra fries at the bottom of the bag. The 50% sale off everything. The nail not tripping today. Each time you drop your phone and there is no crack. The bass of your grandmother's laughter. Cardi B getting her entire life. Going through checkout and your card not being declined. A hot shower. Someone to text. Stretching your back. Making no time for the bullshit. The brows, no longer sisters but twins. The dinner you don't have to pay for. The DJ playing the one song you've been singing all day. Making it home safely. The symptoms finally quiet. The doctor with good news. The house to yourself. It's the small things. A construction of hope. A house of abundance. Everything good greeting you at the door and welcoming you home. I don't know about all y'all, but like this quarantine has been just a lot. So I'm just really appreciative to be in a space where I can just kind of channel that through these poems. So I just want to say thank y'all for that. I want to make mistakes. Bold, unruly mistakes. I want to scrape my knee while learning how to skateboard. I want to make out on the dance floor. Give me face and palm truth. Give me stunning faults. I want to stay out too late. I want to fail the exam. Come on, luxurious error. I want to move to the wrong city. I want to bite my nails and burp at the dinner table. There is nothing honest about perfection. There is no growth in comfort. Hold me, misguided heart. Bring me home, righteous wrong. I want to learn the dance of thriving, how to fall on my face and be in love with every scar. None of this is against you. The groceries you dropped while trying to get your keys, the traffic you are stuck in, the person who won't text you back, the mosquito bite on your left elbow, the rain you did not bring an umbrella for. No, you're not busy chaos or open flaw. The extraordinary happens when we stop looking for it. The train you just missed, the diagnosis, the love you lost, it got you here. With a lot learned and a damn good story. Sometimes that is all we can ask for. Sometimes that is enough. And I have 2 more short poems. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you. It is okay to be the draft, the unfinished, the still working on it, the not yet, to hang up on the bill collector, to sweat in places you shouldn't sweat, to ask someone to prom and get rejected. It is okay to pile your uncertainties, to run into a glass door, to define alone as a song you wrote for yourself. It is okay to not have the words, to shut the blinds and collect the sadness, to hydrate, deactivate, and meditate in that order, to be afraid of how the next one will handle your heart. It is okay to give side eye and deep breathe, because there was once a day like the one you are having, and you made it out of that one. Remember that. It is okay to be constantly in the making. And this last poem is entitled How to Be Strong. And I think in dealing with relationships with people, loved ones, even with yourself, I think there's this idea of strength and be strong, be strong, be strong. And I just don't believe in that. I think there's a vulnerability in just showing up as you are. And so I think I'm doing that right now. I'm just showing up as I am. I mean, this quarantine hasn't been easy for many people, for everyone, I believe. And just speaking for myself, having to deal with quarantine and a health issue and being far from home and loneliness, it's a lot, you know. And I'm okay with not being strong. I'm okay if I just want to stay in bed. And I just want to encourage anyone watching this that's okay. It's okay to show up exactly as you are. And then that is more than enough. So this is How to Be Strong. And thank you both, Sierra and Sam, for having me, truly. How to be strong. Don't be a hot mess, an ugly cry in the emergency room, the 3rd rejection letter this week. Ruin your makeup while weeping over the unpaid parking ticket, the overdue phone bill. Download OkCupid immediately after the ex you met on OkCupid leaves you. Borrow a shoulder to lean on and a Spotify playlist to lose your voice to. Find a bubble bath after dialysis. Find a cute dog after an anxiety attack. Find your name after you were called out of it. Write a love poem to the day you could not get out of bed. Laugh at the negative balance in your bank account. Be bold about your fears, about the diagnosis, about the day you thought you would not make it. Strength is an occupation, a marigold in dust, a thing we cannot see when the world is ending, but a reminder we keep when we survive long enough to see that it has not. Thank you so much, friends. I love y'all.
Oh, Tonya, it is such an honor to share you with our audience. And if they don't know you already, it is just such you touch on so many things that we value as humans and as podcast hosts. And I feel like such a privilege to be, it's such a privilege to be a friend and to be a colleague in this writing world. And I'm just so grateful to share you with our listeners. Before we send you on our way, I want to just ask you about your book, How to Survive Today, which is your 3rd book. and I saw you reading out of Another Black Girl Miracle, which is also an amazing book. But will you talk about your most recent one? I actually, during the release week, I shouted it out at the end of every episode. We share a blind date, something we want to send people up with. And I shouted the book out. But I love how interactive the book is. So if you could talk about it a little bit, I think it's so worth buying.
Yeah, so this is the book, How to Survive Today. Came out with Wild Awake Publishing. So shout out to Jenny. And Claire Biggs, who helped edit this. So just want to give them their due. But How to Survive Today, poems, prompts, and affirmations for those of us still finding our way. So there are a bunch of how-tos, as you just heard. And a lot of the book is very interactive. So you can actually write in it. These are like circles where I ask, on the days you feel lonely, what will you need? And you just kind of fill it in. So it's part journal, part poetry, part affirmations. It's the hug you need, it's the journal, it's the friend, when on the days you don't have anyone and you just need something to spill out towards. And so that's How to Survive Today. I think it's also pretty appropriately titled for 2020.
Yeah.
Need some survival to, there you go. Yeah.
And everybody can find Tonya Ingram on social media at Tonya Ingram, TonyAingram. And that's your website as well, TonyaIngram.com. So, everybody go find Tonya. Tonya, thank you so much. It is such a privilege to hear you read. I'm such a fan. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you.
Bye. Have a great night. Okay, so
that was amazing.
Tonya Ingram.
We don't even need to do the podcast anymore. She just said so everything perfect. That we would say anyway.
I know, she touched on it all. I was like, just break up bingo. I'm so glad to share her with everybody. Anyway, I think that it's time that we could maybe get into our letters. Do you feel ready for the second 2 years in a row? Do you want to basically what I'm saying is, do you want to kick off year 3?
Oh, wow.
I know.
That's an intense way to put it.
Well, make sure to say that to your spouse next time you celebrate an anniversary.
Oh, I do. I'm always like, can you believe we've been together for so long?
Yeah. But this is what I'm saying is this is the first episode in our 3rd year of podcasting. I'm rounding up.
I like that you do things that make it feel like there's more pressure on us to perform, and let's just
constantly
add another thing. Yeah.
That's why I fucked up my microphone before I did this. Okay.
I knew you did it on purpose because you love attention so much.
I do. Okay.
All right. Let's get into our first letter.
I'm ready.
So this comes from Chronically Punctual, who is writing from Brisbane, Australia.
Brisbane.
I said it right. I had to remind myself, don't say Brisbane.
Brisbane.
Yeah, I've never been to Australia, but
we're going to go one day. We're going to go one day.
Yeah, in 2027 or something.
Don't be pessimistic.
Okay, I won't. Anyway, Chronically Punctual writes, I'll cut straight to the chase. I have a beautiful girlfriend who is chronically late. I'm a moderately punctual person. I love that phrase. Moderately punctual. Sometimes I'm a few minutes behind, but generally, if I'm doing something I'm keen about, I'm on time. My partner's lateness isn't personal. I know that, but it's starting to drive me up the wall. I've had to rearrange plans and dates quite a few times in the 3 months we've been together because she's been left behind schedule. I've told her how it makes me feel, unprioritized, like she can't focus on our plans, etc. And she's generally apologetic, but it happens constantly. I am trying to let her lateness teach me to be more flexible and laid back, but it is really getting to me. We are still very new to each other, though moving in together soon. We love a U-Haul. And it's not a big issue by any means, but just one of those things that that can really wear at me. I also hate being short with her about it, but I can't help but express my frustration when she tells me, okay, actually leaving now, an hour before she actually leaves. Please help me be the partner I want to be with some practical tips. P.S. How good is it to have this problem after having years of genuinely toxic partners and problems? Let me tell you, I do feel gratitude. Love you guys to the moon.
All right. Chronically punctual. I love this letter. I love it because while we've never actually gotten a letter about it, I know that this is a thing. I know that people, it's totally a thing. I was telling Willow about the letters this morning, and she was like, oh, well, that's going to be an issue. like saying that like earlier on, maybe it's not an issue now, but I was like, they're about to move in together. And she said, oh, it's going to be an issue. Not like so ominously as that sounds, but okay.
I love that. Willow's just like, yeah, it's going to be an issue. No advice whatsoever. Just like, no, that's going to be a problem. No. Yeah, good luck with that, y'all.
No.
Hopefully you figure it out.
Okay, so before we dive into our unqualified advice, have you experienced anything like this?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, here's the thing.
Are you the punctual one?
I would say that I am a moderately late person.
Me too.
So I will frequently arrive on time to places and then sit in my car for like 5 to 10 minutes because I was always taught that you don't show up to like, unless it's like a doctor's appointment or like a dentist appointment or something.
Oh, so like a social engagement.
Yeah, you don't show up on time because you don't want to be rude and like go into a person's house or like walk into a bar when the person's not ready for you. So I always give people like a little bit of like leeway. I am married to a man who gets places
very punctual
20 minutes early.
Yes. I have been to parties with Mr. Popowski in which
have we ever said his last name on the podcast?
Spencer, just bleep it out.
We're on the 30-second delay, right?
When Peter will show up early and just like offer to help because he knows that he's early, you know? Anyway, yes. We're getting a little off topic, but I love Peter.
No, but it's like for him, it's an act of kindness to be there beforehand and offer to help set up.
And in contrast to that, I was told once when I was younger that making people wait for me was an act of subconscious selfishness. And that was a huge trigger for me because
were you like, fuck you, go die?
No, I was like, I'm a terrible person.
Oh, that's right. We react to criticism differently.
Very differently. And you want to know what the funniest part is? I changed after that person said that to me, because then all of a sudden I felt like so terrible that selfish is also like a trigger word for me because
as a type 2. Yeah.
Yeah, it's challenging for me to hear that word. So whether it's true or not, and at that time, maybe I was being selfish or inconsiderate of the labor or schedule that other people had, like that. That just, back then I thought like, oh, just because it took me 45 minutes to get ready and you 10 doesn't mean I'm being selfish. But the person who said that to me has a point that I want to take the essence from, because I want to be careful that I'm not calling the girlfriend. I don't think people who are late are selfish. I'm not that much of now that I'm a more fully formed adult, I don't actually believe that sentiment that was told to me, but I do think that it shifted my understanding that my time, how I use my time, always has an impact on other people when I have shared experiences with them or shared plans or whatever. And if it is a really easy way to accidentally make someone feel unappreciated or disrespected. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
I don't think that people who are late are selfish, because that would make you and I very selfish.
I'm not selfish.
It did help me reframe my understanding. I guess like when I was younger, I had less of an understanding of the impact that my actions had on other people. And I think lateness is a simple manifestation of that. That like, yeah, it's not that bad when you're 5 minutes late all the time or whatever, but it can wear on a relationship because it makes you, like the letter writer says, it makes them feel unprioritized or like something else is going on. So, yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. But I also do want to create space for the understanding that time is a cultural paradigm, right?
Like time is a concept.
It is. It literally is a concept. And no, just to I can see that 100%, right? And I'm also like a chronological time thinker, so that resonates with me.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, there are folks who view time in a different way are actually trying to be really respectful of other people, by not cutting a conversation short just because they have someplace else to go or they need to be someplace by a certain time, right? So sometimes it might be I got hung up talking to my sister for 45 minutes and I wanted to show her respect by not saying I got someplace to be and I need to be there at this time, right? And so I think it's important to say yes, your partner's lateness can make you feel a certain way, right? Mm-hmm. But that also isn't necessarily what the partner is doing, right? And it isn't necessarily, and in fact, they might be showing respect in a different way than you're used to.
Or receiving, yeah.
Absolutely.
You might not be receiving it, yeah.
And so I don't want to say, I don't want us to come across as being late people are awful people, or late people are selfish, because there are multiple different reasons why people don't value promptness in the same way that many of us do. And it's important to recognize that. And I think that this is a good challenge for us. And you talk about this in your letter, this is an opportunity to learn some flexibility, or to learn that time doesn't have to be on the hour every hour, right? It doesn't have to exist in that way. While also making sure that you're saying and when you're an hour and a half late, that doesn't work for me, right?
Yeah.
This is I think a really good letter in multiple ways, because I think it's it seems so simple, but in reality, there's so many different nuances at play here that are important to be able to understand and work through. And it's something that's simple so that we can talk about it in really simple ways, but elucidates the challenges of being in a relationship with people, which is that you're coming at the world with two different worldviews and two different understandings of how you move in that world. And you have to figure out how to be flexible and adapt and learn new perspectives, while also understanding what your boundaries are. What are the things that you need to say, nope, this is a value for me, and we're going to stick to this one.
And what you were saying made me realize that we talk about boundaries as though they're walls that we put up, or barriers or rules of engagement or whatever. But boundaries is just another word for actions that protect us, or a boundary can be anything. To put up a boundary can be blocking someone, to put up or not put up, because if they're not walls, to enforce a boundary can be to decide to cut that conversation off because you want to prioritize being on time or whatever. Does that make sense? That when you were giving that really great example, it made me realize that both people in this letter, both partners in this letter, can work on their understanding, or maybe better establishing what type of boundaries they want to have around time and their management of time. And again, just like you said, this is not shaming people who are late or shaming people who want to be prompt. But I actually wrote down a quote that I was going to shout out in the next letter, but it's so applicable. This psychotherapist, Joyce Martyr, said that boundaries should be firm enough that you feel comfortable and safe, yet permeable enough that you allow love and intimacy to flow between you and another person.
Oh my God, she said what I just said, but way better. So I appreciate you finding that quote.
Professionals.
Yeah, right.
But so thinking about boundaries in terms of promptness, I don't think about boundaries when I'm well, before we go to the theater, I have to put my makeup on and I got to change and I got to do my hair and then I got to change again because I don't like my outfit. All of a sudden I'm realizing boundaries are saying, oh my God, I would love to talk to you about your problem. I have 20 minutes before I have to go, but I want to be there for you. Right. And just to say, and then if that moment comes up where you have to extend that conversation to make you late for a partner, then that's a choice you can make there. But I've been kind of learning how to do that in my life too, about how to prioritize what you want to prioritize consciously. Cause I think some people pleasers or givers can overstep that. And then also little things like, I know that I can take 45 minutes on my makeup if I want to. And is that a priority over showing my partner that I see that it's important to them that I am on time? Does that make sense?
Yep.
I don't want that to take away from the important point that you added to the conversation, which is that just like everything else in the universe, we all process things and comprehend things and value things differently. Mm-hmm. So, like, take all that with everything Sam just said.
Yeah, no, and that's real. And I think in situations like this, when what my partner is doing is telling me something that my partner doesn't know that it's telling me, mm-hmm. I think it's like a two-pronged approach, which is one, how can I tell my partner what they're doing is saying to me so that they know, right? And mm-hmm. Sounds like you are doing that.
In one way or another.
Right, yeah. Which is great, right? And then the other thing is, how do I tell myself that what I'm telling myself isn't actually what's happening, right?
Totally.
So it's like when Peter leaves his socks on the floor, what I tell myself is Peter is like disrespecting our house, or like Peter expects me to pick up after him. So like I will tell him that. And also I will tell myself that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is that he wants to take his socks off right now and he doesn't want to go all the way to the bedroom to put them in the hamper, right? Like sometimes when we have these types of symbolic conflict that are not actually about the thing, but about the symbolism behind the thing, it's really important for us to be naming what is being symbolized. Because otherwise it just becomes like, why are you so mad at me when I'm late? Like, I'm just a late person. Like, I don't get it. And it has to be, I'm frustrated with you because your lateness is telling me that you don't want to spend time with me, or that you aren't respectful of my time and the places that I need to be, or you're not prioritizing me, right? Like, we need to be explicit and clear about those things, because otherwise we're going to get fixated on the socks and not what the socks are actually saying.
Totally. You're going to love this. It's like the 2 times out of the year that I prep for these episodes. This is an accidental prep. I was listening to a podcast called Fun Therapy.
Oh, fun.
I know. The host is named Mike Foster, and I'm just sort of getting into it because I'm realizing that I want to be listening to more wellness things, so that you and I are constantly introducing new things to our program, diversifying our language, whatever. And plus, I'm a human and I want to learn how to handle conflict without turning into a turtle. So the podcast today said something, it was about conflict and different conflict styles. And he said that oftentimes when we are upset with our partners, it is not a reflection of their flaws, but a reflection of our needs. So it is not Peter, it's not a flaw in Peter that he leaves his socks out. It is a reflection that you want to keep of your boundaries, of your needs, that you want to keep a different, that you have a different approach to life, a different lifestyle, cleanliness, different orderliness. And
thanks, Mom, for my weird thing about keeping the house clean all the time.
And
she's not listening, but I'll tell her tomorrow.
And thinking about the tardiness thing, like, I wrote this down in context of this letter because the sensitive little turtle in me didn't want, when our letter writer does approach their partner, I didn't want the partner to feel like, oh my God, you're exposing a flaw. It's not about that. It's just the way that you live your life. It's not about shame. It's not about wrongness. It's just about people moving through the world in a different way. And I thought that quote could help the letter writer too, be like, this is not something wrong with you. This is just something that I want from you. It doesn't, it's kind of goes into the Brene Brown shame versus guilt, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. It's don't feel ashamed of this. I'm just telling you who I am. I'm showing you what my needs are. And my needs can be permeable, flexible, like my boundaries, but I want to establish them a little bit more clearly because it's starting to hurt my feelings. It's starting to make me feel unprioritized, things like that.
Yeah, I love that. I would also just say chronically punctual. Late person for way longer than they've been in relationship with you. And so little bit of patience and understand that it might take a few times repeating. When you are late, it makes me feel like that you don't value me, or you don't value my time, or you're not prioritizing me, before it's really going to sink in. And I know that this is really frustrating for you in this moment, but have faith. And I would say trust your partner that they have the ability to hear you, that they are thinking about it, that they are hopefully going to work at it at some point. But know that big changes like this take time, right? When your worldview is, I'm always late, or your worldview is, I always take my socks off and throw them on the ground. And then suddenly you have to change that, right? You want to be in a relationship with the person, and there's something fundamental about the way that you understand the world that you need to start adapting to. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to take a change of habits. It's going to have to be like, oh shoot, I'm late. Let me remember what this means for my partner. And so grace, I think, is important in this moment. I would say that lateness is not for me a deal breaker, but it could be for you. So like, let's be real about that.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's continue to have these conversations, continue to be frank about it, and also know that your partner is trying, right? Your partner is listening and trying to hear you, right? And just give them some grace to figure out what that means for them and how they can show up for you differently.
Yeah, and how you can show up for them and meet them where they're at, where their lifestyle is. Because just like Peter's socks, I know I do things that Willow has adjusted her life to that she probably wouldn't want to, but she's choosing to,
Oh yeah, for sure. Whenever I cook, I leave all of the kitchen cabinets open, and then Peter has to close them all. I don't know why.
Freak.
I don't know why. And like, he's like, he hasn't been living with me for a few weeks because he's in Wausau. And so every time I walk in the kitchen, I'm like, oh my God, all of the cabinet doors are open.
I would be like, oh my God, my kitchen is haunted. Does it ever scare you? Is it ever like poltergeist?
No.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
I'm always like, oh yeah, I just don't close any kitchen cabinets ever.
Yeah. Okay, chronically punctual. I hope that at least gives you some ground to stand on. I think you should talk to your partner about this, but you two should approach it not as though you're exchanging blows, like you did this, no, you do this, but you're on the same team. You're wearing the same uniform. You are gonna problem solve this together and meet in the middle somewhere. And remember that, like Sam said, she's gonna be late sometimes, and you're gonna be waiting sometimes, but sometimes she'll be on time too. So,
hopefully.
Really smooth end to a
yeah, sometimes she'll be on time.
Trail off. All right, chronically punctual. Thank you so much for writing.
We love you
so much. All right, our second letter is from Mayonnaise Johnson and Johnson. No, just Johnson, not Johnson. I just put that in there. My bad.
Yeah, no, I read the name of this, and I was like, I have no context clues for what this means.
No, me neither. And I love that they end the letter, sincerely, Mayonnaise. Okay, Mayonnaise Johnson, who is writing to us from quarantine. Dear Sam and Sierra, I have been with my wonderful boyfriend for 2.5 years. It is my first relationship following a life previously unconcerned with romance, and I find myself clumsy and fumble-footed and ever grateful for my patient boyfriend who has been by my side as I stumble my way through figuring out boundaries, feeling empowered to express when I feel hurt, and learning to let go of the little things. He is supremely kind, and I love him dearly. I live at home because dorms are hella expensive, and I'm lucky enough to not only have a kind and supportive family, but one that I can endure spending long amounts of time with, something that has been truly tested in quarantine. My mother falls into the group of high-risk individuals. She is over 65 and immunocompromised, so I've been following all the guidelines to the letter. Now, the main issue, my boyfriend is not currently social distancing in his work and personal life and still interacts with large numbers of people, which I am fine with. Unfortunately, that means I do not feel comfortable having him in my house. I told him that I would love to still meet up as long as it was outside and we stayed 6 feet apart and we wore masks, which has drastically changed how we can hang out. My boyfriend started out completely in support, although he expressed understandable disappointment. But over time, his visits started dwindling in both time and frequency. He began voicing more often how he wishes he could just go inside my house, or how he misses watching movies and cuddling. Each time I would tell him I miss those things too, and I would ask if he blamed me for the fact that we can't hang out the way we used to, and he said no, and that he understood and the situation just sucked. And I would agree, honestly, almost everything about 2020 has sucked.
Preach.
It was hard not to notice the pattern of him visiting less, and in my head, the thought became, he's visiting less because you are not worth the trouble of visiting. You are not loved. It was too persuasive a thought for me to argue around. So I enlisted his help. I told him the anxiety I was struggling with and asked for his real reasoning so I could replace it. He assured me that it wasn't a matter of worth at all and that he still loved me. However, when pressed on why he didn't visit, he admitted that he was frustrated with my rules, that they were, especially the 6-foot rule, stupid and pointless to him because the difference between the risk of transmission from, say, 6 feet to 3 feet is negligible. And that he blames me just a little bit in his heart, not his head, for enforcing such a cumbersome, pointless hassle on him, one that makes our interactions unable to have the illusion of normalcy and has instead made them constantly stressful. I admit it's probably a very small difference, but I cling to it because it's still what's being recommended. I know that this mostly has to do with my anxiety around my mother's health than the reality of the disease transmission. However, for me, it is not something I'm willing to risk, no matter how small the differences may be. So I asked if it would be helpful to think of it more as a favor he's doing me for my sake, even if it's pointless. He said, no, not really. The 6 feet thing does not bother me as much as it does him. It is annoying, but because it's my boundary, it does not hurt my feelings. I know that I would feel differently if, like him, it was instead being forced upon me. I had a hunch, so I asked if it was possible that the reason this 6-foot thing bothered him so much is that, yes, it seemed pointless and cumbersome, but also that I had all the boundaries right now and that I have all the control, so he needed to have one boundary, one thing he wouldn't compromise on. And he said, yes, exactly. I asked him if by recognizing that root feeling, he could detach from the 6 feet rule, which I am unwilling to compromise on, and if we could create a new rule for me to follow, a new boundary for him so he has control. But he said it couldn't. I do not know if this is relevant to put in here or if it's just petty, but I will include it just in case. Last summer, in order to follow his dream, we were long distance for 6 months. During this time, he was in the wilderness, and I was never sure if I would be able to call or reply to text. There were days that he could receive my messages but could not send messages. Also, side note, whenever you mention letters from the void, I think of this time because I felt like I was speaking into the void each day.
Oh God, that's so sad.
I've been there though. I mentioned this to say that I truly understand how he's feeling. I felt the same frustration and resentment, and I only got through it by reminding myself, quote, this isn't something that was just done to you. You agreed to remain in this relationship, which means you agreed to be long distance. This was your choice too. Very mature.
Mm-hmm.
So I told him that he does not get to choose my boundaries, but he can choose whether or not to engage with them. And he has the choice of whether or not to visit me. And now we're exploring going completely virtual, long distance with our relationship. Admittedly, I am loathing the idea of returning to long distance. I hated it, but I think it is important that he regains his feelings of control in this situation. My question is this: I understand his need for boundaries and that this has become tied up with his self-respect, which is something I would never ask him to give up. However, I am not sure in this instance if it is self-respect or ego that has made this the hill he is willing to die on. I'm not sure if I identify the difference, which is why I feel I need to turn to your help, Sam and Sierra. Is this being human and having boundaries and limitations, or is this throwing a temper tantrum? With the former, I would gladly go long distance again, but with the latter, I think I would lose so much respect for him if I don't know if I could withstand the weight of the long distance again. My second question is, am I being too stubborn with my own boundaries? I understand relationships are about compromise, and it shocks me how unwilling I am to bend on this. It is possible family is a blind spot for me, and that being so pedantic that about the 6 foot rule is in fact stupid. Please tell me if it is. And finally, is there another solution I'm missing? Am I being too black and white? Thank you for reading my letter. I found you through Instagram when you were on your early stages, even before Patreon. Thank you for that post. As I mentioned, I had a little exploration into the romantic realm and had yet found myself in a relationship. You were a resource for me in navigating the incredibly rewarding but mostly confusing experience of loving another human being. Thank you for your time, energy, and your work. Sincerely, Mayonnaise.
So cute, Mayonnaise.
Okay, long letter, all important context, and beautifully written. All of your excellently used commas.
Oh, yes. I was reading through it and I was like, wow, she really put all the commas exactly where we needed to be able to read this in a way that doesn't make us sound stupid.
All of your English professors are very happy with you right now.
Absolutely.
Okay, so going back to that quote that I shared preemptively in the first letter about how boundaries should be firm, so that you're comfortable and safe, yet permeable enough that you allow love and intimacy to flow between you and another person. Yeah, that's a beautiful sentiment, not in a pandemic.
You don't want boundaries to be permeable at all in 2020, right?
Yeah,
like you don't want any coronavirus going through that.
I wrote down the quote and then I wrote, but COVID, question mark? Like, COVID fucks with everything when it comes to our boundaries and our sense of personal safety and our sense of sacrifice, what we're willing to risk for our loved ones. And it has messed with my head too, Mayonnaise. Like I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing for my loved ones. And I also miss them deeply and want to connect with them and want to connect with other human beings. And for me, who is a chronic oversharer, overstepper, like overgiver, unnecessarily so, it's been really hard to parse out what were my real what are my boundaries? What are my firm things? And what do I feel like? What am I afraid that I'm going to give up if somebody asks me? So I just want to vocalize what a challenging time it is to be a human in relationship with another person, or even just to have other humans around. And to say, I think that I speak for both of us when I say we're very proud of your clear articulation of your boundaries to your partner and to yourself, and your mental exploration of what does it mean to, basically, you're doing really great head and heart work looking at these boundaries and making sure this is an authentic representation of who you are and what you want to be doing in the world. So we just want to give you a gold star, A+, and you're asking all the right questions.
For sure. And you are engaging in you're engaging in some really difficult conversations with your partner right now, which is even harder right now, just because everyone is so spread thin. But the fact that you are sort of asking questions about the stories that you are telling each other, the stories that you're telling yourselves, right? And asking questions about is this about this or is this about this? That is going to serve you in the long term in relationships, because those are the types of conversations that actually get at the root of the problem and not just focus on what the symptoms of the problem might be. But it is hard. It is really hard in this situation.
I honestly, part of me, the quicker, more judgmental part of me wants to shit on your boyfriend about being a whiny little punk. But I don't believe that. I'm just being hyperbolic. But I don't feel that way truly at all, because it's such a challenging time, and because we all have different levels of comfortability, different boundaries, different fears, different mitigating factors that make these fears bigger or smaller. And so I'm not even mad at your boyfriend for being frustrated, because it's really hard to navigate this. And we've just never experienced anything like this. And it's really hard to not take other people's boundaries during a pandemic personally, even though they're just not personal. I'm just vocalizing the fact that even the most enlightened people are going to be is this about me? No, this is not about me. The ego is always going to speak up, right?
Yeah. And I think I think that these types of boundaries are especially difficult when someone establishes them for you, because it feels like a judgment. Like it feels like somehow I am not doing the right thing, or somehow I am putting other people in danger, or like the way that I'm living my lifestyle is somehow unsafe,
hurting my partner too,
For sure. And I think, so I empathize with your partner. Like I can totally understand why his reaction would be like this. But I think what's really hard in this situation is for me, in at least the way that you two are talking about it, is that he is putting his disappointment about this virus and quarantine onto you, as if you are the one that is enforcing rules around not seeing people, right? And that's not the truth, right? Like you didn't bring this virus on. You didn't make up the rules that we're supposed to be following, right? Like you didn't choose to have a mother who is 65 and immunocompromised, right? Like those things are all outside of your control. And it feels to me that the way that he's approaching this conversation is that he's focusing on what you have control over, which is you establishing like, no, we're going to follow the rules, as opposed to what he's really angry at is the fact that this virus is a fucking buzzkill and means that all of us don't get to do the shit we want to do. And it feels like there's no reward, right? Like following these rules doesn't do anything except mitigate risk.
No reward. Nobody from the CDC comes to my house and brings me candy when I stay 6 feet away from all of my loved ones.
For sure. And the only thing that we're hearing right now is that if you don't follow the rules, you're a horrible person. Which is like
there's such a real thing, coronavirus guilt.
Yeah, for sure. And I am not saying that we should not try and encourage people to follow the rules, right? But I am saying that even for me, who's doing stuff, and like you too, who's trying our best, it feels like every time I go to the grocery store, I feel shame about being at the grocery store, as if I am somehow putting other people in danger, which I am, right? Like that's what's so awful about this is I need to go to the grocery store. Yeah, right. I need to go to the grocery store, but also me being at the grocery store puts that clerk at risk, right? And there's no way to mitigate that. And it's so this constant feeling of shame and panic and fear is really real. And it's affecting your boyfriend for sure. And it's also affecting you too, right? This fear of am I doing the right thing? These are the recommendations. Am I overreacting? Who knows? There's no rules. I wish that someone would come and tell me this is what's going to happen, but that's not the case. So just want to say this is such a hard thing to be in, but it's not your fault that we're in it. Right. And I don't like the way that it seems like your boyfriend is trying to blame you for following the rules in a pandemic when really the pandemic and the rules aren't your choice.
Totally. And I think another thing that I pulled out of that fun therapy podcast that I listened to today. Such a funny description because it doesn't sound like the title. It's called Fun Therapy. Was about how 99% of conflict comes from the idea that we're assuming that we're communicating, when in reality, most times we don't hear what someone is saying to us. We imagine what we think that they meant. And in this instance, I think that your boyfriend's lack of control is making him hear everything you're saying as an enforcement of control on him or a disempowering thing, right? There's a translation happening here that's making it hard for him to say, this really sucks. I'm so glad we're in it together. I'm so sorry you have to quarantine because of your mother. Is there anything I can do? There's something in there.
Yeah, that would be the right way to handle it on his part, for sure.
There's something in our egos or whatever. I think you're right. To your point about if it's self-respect versus ego, I just think our brains are too complicated to not make it all about us and what we want, for sure. Even when we try. And I think he's hearing you saying, I'm not going to budge on these And instead of hearing you say, I'm just doing what CDC is telling me to, I didn't ask for this. He's hearing, I don't get what I want. I'm intentionally not giving you what you want, or like, I'm not being flexible.
That's fair.
Yeah. And that's where I feel like maybe we can turn the tables a little bit and start holding your partner accountable for the fact that like you said, Sam, none of this is your fault. And that if the shitty thing about these CDC guidelines is that it's sort of like, I don't know in what context this phrase was made up, but like you're only as fast as your slowest teammate or something like that, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Sure, there's an origin for that has to do with war and murder or something.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
But in like taking that kind of idea in the guidelines, the best way to do it is the person with the strictest guidelines is king or queen or non-binary royalty. Right.
The sovereign, if you will.
Right. It's not the person with the loosest boundaries who gets to establish the rules. It's unfortunate. And that is unfair. I want to just say that, right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing fair about this whole experience. There's nothing about this that is going to make sense and feel just and feel fun, right?
Welcome to life, people.
Right. But the best thing we can do is draw a universal line that covers everyone, right? Like if your boundaries are here and your boundaries are here and your boundaries are here and your boundaries are here, we got to draw a line up so that all of the boundaries are covered. And unfortunately, that means the strictest. Mm-hmm. And that is just the hard pill that he has to swallow. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. But like also not unfortunately, right? Like that's good because as strict as we can be about these rules means that there's less chance of people dying. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying like, yes, that's exciting and also unfortunate because it does mean that then like we don't get to see people that we love, which is absolutely legitimate.
But I think it's
right. But I think it's important to like in these moments of frustration where we're like, God, I just wish I could get on a fucking airplane and like go someplace, right? Remembering that like, yes, I wish I could do that. And also my choice to not buy that plane ticket means that I am mitigating risk for other people from dying from this, right? Mm-hmm. And that sucks, but at least it's like a silver lining to the fact that we can't do any of this stuff is that like every decision that we make that is putting distance between ourselves and others is a decision that saves people's lives. And I think it's important for us to remember that even when it means that I can't see my friends in my house, like they can't come over and watch TV with me. We have to be outside and we have to be masked and we have to be 6 feet apart, right? And that sucks. But it does mean that person's not going to give it to their mom who's sick. That means that person is not going to give it to the grocery store worker who is immunocompromised, right? And that it's important to remember that and also recognize that it just really sucks.
Yeah. I think that I'd like to steer this letter before we close out to, so how does, now that we've made it clear to Mayonnaise that we support her boundaries, we empathize with both people in this relationship, but believe she's making the hard and necessary decision to, sleep well at night. But I want to steer it to, because I know this is something happening across the world. How do you, how does Mayonnaise now not make this the downfall of their relationship? Like, how do they move forward? I feel like when it wants to, COVID can permeate every part of our lives, right? Mm-hmm. Because of all these necessary choices that we have to make. I believe because of their communicative abilities, Mayonnaise, I believe you guys can make it through this. Mm-hmm. I don't think your boyfriend is being a terrible person. I don't think you're being a terrible person. I think that you're just in a really tough, necessary situation. So now that you've decided to withhold or hold these boundaries up to potentially go long distance, or he can just deal with it and enjoy the time that he gets with you. I don't mean that in such a shitty way, but
you can either
see her or you can't. Like your choice. Or at least that ball is in your park court. Sports. So how about they move forward and they both, maybe Mayonnaise takes some words from this podcast and says, we didn't choose this. It sucks, blah, 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 blah. And they get on the same page again. How do they make their relationship, if not thrive, survive the coronavirus?
Mm-hmm. I think
I'm looking at you, buddy.
No, I think that going long distance, right? I think that there are multiple different situations in which, and you had a great example of it, in which relationships, the circumstances of relationships suddenly change.
Yeah.
And folks have to be in relationship differently than they want to be, right? But in the same way that suddenly your boyfriend going out of state for 6 months, you were able to figure out how to communicate, and you were able to figure out how to like hunker down and make it through that 6 months.
Totally.
In a way that that was not great for you, but in a way that at least preserved the relationship long enough that you could come back together. And I think that's exactly the type of thing that you need to do in this situation as well. What I think is interesting in this is that you were the one that had to figure out how to like make the best of a shitty situation. And now your boyfriend is going to have to be the one to make the best of the shitty situation. And so like, it's going to be important for you to like, I think, help him in knowing what that feels like, and knowing like, yeah, I remember, not in like a tit for tat way, but in a way of like, yeah, this is hard. Like, I wish that I could see you, like, but we've been here before. We've done this before. We can make it through again, right? Like, we have been separated. We haven't been able to talk. And I think that you can do that. I think it's bullshit that you're contemplating going full long distance when you live in the same town and you could see each other 6 feet apart, like outside. But this is your relationship, so you can make that choice for yourself.
I don't think it's bullshit, because I think that it maybe sets that universal line,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, this is, whatever. And also maybe it's just easier for him to not see her in person because like she's so gorgeous and he just wants to kiss her. And
I mean, that sounds right. Her name is Mayonnaise. So like, how can you resist?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think that Mayonnaise, I think you can do this. And I think he can do this too. And both of you are going to have to like look at each other 6 feet apart, mimic holding hands and saying like, this sucks. We're in this together. Yep. This sucks. And it's not going to be like this forever. And we've been here before and we can make our way out. We can do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So maybe give yourself a little grace, give him a little bit of grace, and remember that this is unprecedented times. And
yes.
Blah,
oh my God. Thank you. My email from Nike. I appreciate you calling that out.
Yeah. Okay. So good luck. We love you. Stay safe. You're making smart and thoughtful choices.
Absolutely.
And thank you for writing.
We love you. All right. Our third and final letter comes from DC, who is writing from California. DC writes, "Hi, Sam and Sierra. Thank you for this podcast and everything you do to help us head and heart workers. I've been binged your podcast for the last week or two as I work my 10+ hour shifts every day. You have me laughing, crying, and contemplating my own life, romantic situation, and well-being every day. I can honestly say this podcast has helped me in a deeply profound way. So to my problem that I thought I could be brief, but I suck at that. So I'm sorry. It's a long story. So the woman that I'm dating is a 20-year-old queer Latinx cisgender woman, she, her, and I am a 23-year-old Black queer trans man. We have been together for about 1.5 years now. We are in a monogamous relationship that has been anything but steady. I will try to summarize this as much as I can while still giving you background. For the month of knowing each other and the first month of being together, things were ideal. It was happy, chill, and very physical. Around the second month of our relationship, things started to change drastically. Anytime I planned to leave for work or go hang out with my friends, she would have a panic attack and completely shut down. Trying to be the best partner I could be, I would call off work or cancel plans with my friends and spend the night calming her down and trying to make her happy. Over the next 4 months, it slowly came out that she suffered from a lot of trauma when she was younger that has carried over into adulthood. And as she is working on therapy and taking medication for it. I tried to be extra sensitive to this as I have my own diagnosed mental illness and understand how hard it can be. Around 6 months into our relationship, we moved in together. Things were up and down, but when things were good, they were the best feeling I had ever experienced with someone. Yes, I am rolling my eyes at that statement. Anyway, around that time, with spending the most time with her I noticed that she had stopped taking her medication and going to therapy, and that her negative reactions to me leaving or having an outside life increased. She started telling me I couldn't talk to my friends about our relationship anymore and snapping at me anytime I disagreed with her or had to do something without her. I let her effectively isolate me from anything outside of our relationship. Throughout this time, I had multiple conversations with her about how she was treating me, what I could do to help her feel better, and what changed from the early parts of our relationship till now. Her only explanation was that she didn't love me as much as she did now, and that she was scared of losing me. Despite our many conversations, her behavior did not change. Soon I found myself adopting this behavior with her as well. Breaking down when she needed to leave, snapping when I was expecting something of her that wasn't fulfilled, or other toxic behavior. Around the 9-month mark, I broke up with her. We were in the middle of a fight, and she kept telling me that I should break up with her and that I should just do it already, so I did. But not a week later, we were back to talking as she explained that she wasn't taking her meds to help her function, and that she would start doing that and going to therapy again. By the end of the month, we were back together, although not living together, just in time to celebrate a nice Christmas as a couple and be merry and happy. It felt like the beginning of our relationship again, chill, happy, and extremely physical. Around 10 months, we had a conversation about whiteness. With her being POC, a poli-sci and sociology major with deep interests in public policy, immigration, and helping marginalized communities, and me being a bioengineer that grew up in a predominantly white suburb, we had different ideas of whiteness and the feelings it provoked. She couldn't get over the fact that I had white friends and that I didn't find whiteness disgusting, and said she couldn't be with someone that didn't believe the same. So I grabbed my stuff and left, only to be bombarded with about 50 texts from her, profusely apologizing that night and questioning why I left and that she hadn't really broken up with me. Again, with the same process, we were talking by the end of the week and together by the end of the month, just in time to celebrate our anniversary, where I gave her a promise ring. Another 2 months go by which at first started to dwindle once again on relationship check-ins. I started becoming her emotional verbal punching bag anytime she was stressed about school or work and couldn't do anything to please her. Around the same time, I became extremely depressed. While sharing my feelings about this with her, While sharing my feelings with her about all this, she started becoming emotionally disconnected and distanced, and we started asking for a break again. I didn't argue and allowed her to set the terms of the break, which was no contact for a week. The next day, she continuously texted me apologizing, saying that she was just overwhelmed and couldn't handle me relying on her emotionally like that, and that she wanted to talk. I told her no, and that I needed the time we established for the break to see if this was a sustainable relationship, and that she should do the same. Still, she continued to text me throughout the week, begging me to talk to her and give her an answer. So a few days before the end of the break, I finally gave in and went to see her. I tried to talk to her about what she was feeling, how she felt our relationship was going, and if she thought we were in a healthy relationship, but she didn't say a word. I ended up breaking up with her and she ran off crying. That night, she texted me 30 times and called 10, asking why I would leave her like that, why I would make her love me just to break her heart, how I could leave her when she was having such a hard time emotionally, how she thought I loved her, but apparently I didn't, and so on. A week goes by of calm talking and sorting out business, then a month of talking about our relationship, future, hopes, and cuddling and other physical stuff, only to come to the present. We technically aren't back together, but we talk and act that way. We establish that we are exclusive and that we still love each other and want to make the relationship work. However, I am starting to see the past and new toxic behavior creeping back into the mix, which she consistently has blamed her relationship with her parents and need for validation on. Through all this mess, I know I love her, but I don't think we can be together. Even more, do you believe that a person can love someone when the relationship is toxic, but not when it is stable? I also find myself just not being as excited and happy as I used to be when the relationship had its ups and downs. Am I crazy for liking that relationship instability more than its actual stability? I have a lot of questions to ask. I really wish I had found this podcast sooner and given myself more time to learn before getting in this relationship. But my main questions are, do you believe there's a way to repair a toxic relationship? If so, how? is this relationship salvageable? Or should I just be the douche canoe, DC, hence the name, that breaks up with the girl for the third time, even though all things considered, the relationship is getting better? How do you break up with someone and not get back together with them? Great question. I hope that this wasn't too much to read, and that, and that answering these questions can be of help to more than just me. Even if you don't answer it, it has helped me to get all of this down. Again, I thank both of y'all for the emotional labor you put into answering your listeners' letters, and hope and find some clarity in our hardships.
Oh, DC, thank you so much for writing.
Thank you so much.
This is a pickle.
Pickle.
A bit of a pickle.
I would say a big pickle. Like
that's right. I was like, not even a bit, just a big pickle.
Yeah, like a big one that you get from like Jimmy John's, where it's like the whole cucumber.
So good. I love pickles.
They're so good.
I love pickles. Okay.
Anyway.
The things we choose to go, like the things that we go off on our tangents, they just don't make any sense.
No, they don't.
Okay. Anyway, DC, I need to like have a little meeting with you, Sam, one-on-one privately right now on
cool. When we have like 300 people watching us or whatever. Great.
Yeah. What do you want to tackle in this letter? Because there's so many good questions, like not just what's happening in DC's relationship, but what DC writes. Those questions are so good. We have to answer, how do you break up with someone and not get back together?
Yeah, right.
I want to talk about sort of like not liking your relationship as much when it's stable than highs and lows. I would also personally like to dive into maybe a little bit of his partner's experiences about the acting out, that the acting out and taking things out on our partners. I just want to like tackle that for like 1 minute. Anything else?
No, I would want to talk a little bit about sort of toxic relationships and what they feel like to be in them. So let's talk about that too.
Okay. Well, then maybe thank you. Thank you for giving us that time. Wonderful listeners.
Yeah. We're professionals. We prep before these episodes.
But so I want to talk about, let's, DC, I'm going to pause on you for a moment. And I want to talk about your partner, and I want to talk about ways in which we can be better partners in general. And when we say head and heart work, we don't just mean, let me self-reflect on how I can be treated better, how boundaries I can have to make to benefit me and my healing and things like that. We also, when we say head and heart work, we mean looking at your own behavior, holding yourself accountable to the healing and the love that you want to give and receive, right? And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, so I'm super happy to have this small little tangent in this letter. A couple weeks ago, I suggested the book Attached as a blind date. And then the following, or like that week, Spencer and I did a Patreon episode in which we gave Spencer, our producer, the quiz on what type of attachment style he had. And one of the questions in the quiz connected to the book is, do you feel the need to act out in your relationship? And I remember because when I gave Willow the quiz and I gave it to Spencer, and both of them were like, what does that mean? And originally, and on the Patreon episode, I said, well, I think like cheating or something. And then a couple days later, I caught myself acting out in my relationship. And I was like,
this is what this is. Yeah.
Idiot, this is what this is. So I just want to like take a moment to express some transparency and growth. To me, acting out in your relationship is when you, like DC illustrates in this, you take things out on your partner, little things like, for example, talking about CDC regulations, Willow was hanging out with her friends the other day, and I was feeling, I don't know whether it was insecure or PMSy or something was going on where like I wasn't just like, cool, honey, like be safe, because I trust her and we're following the same boundaries, social distancing, being outside, things like that. But because I was feeling insecure, because I was feeling lonely, and maybe sensitive about her being with other people and not me, right? Or like whatever
that ancient attachment style coming out.
Of course, because if she's not around me all the time, she's obviously going to stop loving me, totally irrational. I know that. But I felt that like, and that's something I combat all the time because I don't want to be, I want to have a healthy relationship. I want my soon to be spouse to be able to like have a life outside of me. That is something I want and want to cultivate. But I remember being like, just not knowing why I felt like spiky, right? Like I felt like, I just felt like, and I didn't know where it was coming from. And I hadn't even articulated it to myself. So when she comes home, I'm like, oh, and did you stay 6 feet apart? And did you do this? And did you do this? And I was like getting into her about it when like, I trust her and I know that she's following guidelines that I'm following. And it threw her off so much because she's like, where is this coming from? And I was like, and honestly, Sam, I like laid there for like 5 seconds and I was like, oh, I overreacted. I sat and I thought, why am I acting like this? And I realized I was acting out because I wanted her to say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I love you. Or I wanted her to affirm me in some way or whatever it was. And I'm being
and you like wanted her not to go, right?
Yes,
like, and you didn't get your way. And so you lashed out by being like, well, you probably let COVID home, right?
And I'm being very vague because I just like don't want my business out there. And so it almost sounds a little bit worse than it actually was. But that is the essence of it, is that I was feeling insecure. And so I acted out very subtly to a way that I held her accountable for something I didn't authentically feel. And so long story short, lovely Just Break Up listeners, I have been wanting to say this to you all, is that I caught myself acting out. And now I realize what it is. It's those tiny times where you let whatever it is bothering you or you let those little voices in your head act out their sick, sadistic fantasies in tiny little ways. And when we say head and heart work, we don't just mean protecting you and your heart and your health and your healing. We mean making you a safer, healthier place for other people, right? And a huge part of that is calling yourself out on your shit, is knowing when you are acting out. And we got through that moment because I stopped and I thought, oh my God, like I felt embarrassed. I was like, I overreacted. I'm sorry. Like there's nothing more mortifying than being like in the moment saying all my ego wanted me to do was be like, well, you don't care about my family. You don't care about my back and you'd rather be out there, blah, 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 and then slam the door because that makes our egos feel so vindicated. When in reality, I became vulnerable and closer and more honest and authentic with my partner and more intimate because I said, I'm sorry, I overreacted. I don't feel that way. And I was taking something out on you and I'm sorry.
Yeah, for real.
And I'm not just sharing that just to like pat myself on the back, although I was proud of myself. And now I'm sort of like, oh, those are other little ways that I act out. It's like when I get cranky because it's not like that I need a Snickers, it's that something in me is afraid and I'm acting out because I want her love. Anyway,
that's real.
Dark, evil part of me. But that doesn't come out very often because I'm not like the hot mess that I was when I was younger. So now it comes out. I know. Cheers to all these to the first letter writer who was like, isn't it great that I'm worried about being late and not,
right.
being toxic behavior. Right. Yeah. And so like, this is the tiny shadow of an old self of me that would make it into a fight or would be afraid that she was cheating on me, even though she's way not, So this is all a long-winded off-topic thing to say that what your partner isn't doing, DC, your partner is not doing that true, hard, laborious, constant head and heart work that is, I'm not going to take my triggers out on my partner. I'm not going to act out when I feel insecure because I know that the fastest, healthiest route to dealing with my insecurities is to say the name, right? To say, I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling anxious right now. I just blew up right there. And it was because I'm feeling like you don't love me and you're going to leave me, right? That is the route to intimacy and vulnerability. But we love to take these spiraling little like meandering journeys often to like petty bitchy land, you know, because that feels safer to us than just saying, I'm feeling anxious because you weren't with me, you know, like, or doing that labor yourself, saying like, the reason why I really wanted to talk about this, particularly in context of this letter, is I see so much hurt going on in DC's partner. And I see a long road ahead of her that we have all traveled and will continue to travel for the rest of our lives, of trying to find a way to listen and honor your feelings while also being accountable to your actions associated with them. And that is so hard. But this is how we start doing it, is recognizing when we are subconsciously acting out for things that we don't truly believe. It's about bringing our subconscious and conscious minds together. And that's hard work. Anyway, transition to DC. Was that okay?
Yeah, no, that was great. And I think that that thing that you just said about accountability is so key here. And part of what I wanted to talk about in terms of toxic relationships is that, at least from my experience, one of the things that leads to toxic relationships sort of becoming increasingly toxic and becoming increasingly hard to get out of is that we are often so willing to practice empathy without practicing accountability, right? And so what we do is instead say my partner is treating me horribly. My partner is screaming at me. My partner is, breaking down and yelling at me whenever I leave the house. But I understand that my partner is hurting, right? I understand that they are going through something, that they have a mental health issue that they are working through. And that's beautiful. Like that empathy is at the core of relationships, right? Empathy allows us to see another person and try and understand what they're going through.
It is a great strength.
Absolutely it's a strength. And it's clear to me, DC, that you have it in droves. Like you are a very empathetic person. And I love and appreciate that about you. But where toxic relationships often begin to deepen is when we have that empathy and yet we use that empathy to rid our partner of any accountability over their actions, right? And I say that because first of all, it's harmful for you, and secondly, it's harmful for your partner. It is not helpful for your partner to look at her and say, you are not responsible for any of your actions because you have a mental illness. You are not responsible for treating me right because you have had trauma in your life, right? That isn't helpful. Like that's not fixing people. That is not being supportive. That is not actually helping them.
That's not loving a whole person, right?
Absolutely.
We assume that that's how we love people.
Yes, 100%. But that's not what it looks like, right? And instead, what we do in toxic relationships with toxic people who are hurting, which is every toxic relationship, to be clear, unless you're dating like a sociopath, in which case, like, good luck. But like, what we do then is that we just allow the toxicity to flourish and not the relationship, right? We just allow the bad behavior to continue to be central because we don't ever ask for something different.
Totally.
And I think that sucks. Like, I think that is what makes it so hard to get out of toxic relationships, because you look at the person, literally, I remember doing this and looking at the person and being like, I can't go out tonight because if I go out tonight, then this person's not going to have anyone to talk to or hang out with. And they're going to feel really bad about themselves. And even though they're being an asshole to me right now, who else is going to love them enough to like make them feel better? And that isn't, like those feelings are like flooding me right now. Like I'm literally like being triggered by it. But that is how we allow toxic relationships to continue, is by just practicing empathy and sympathy and assuming that we are the only person that's ever going to be able to love this person enough to fix them, when that's not how you do it. Like that's not real. That's not love. That's just like pity.
Yeah, I'm loving this conversation, and I'm loving everything you said. I want to add an addendum to something I said too. I said, like, that's not love. And I think that's like a little complicated of a statement because it is, right? I want to adapt that statement to go off of something you said, which is that love is not enough. Like that love can't get us to where we want to go with these people, right? With these partners, or with ourselves, right? Love is not enough sometimes. We need boundaries, which are a manifestation of love, actually.
That's right. And our maturity.
Right. We need mental health resources. We need time. We need patience. We need accountability. You need so much. Oftentimes that what you're talking about, particularly in toxic relationships, that ever understanding love because someone is hurting is not enough. It will, and obviously, DC, you are starved, right? You are confused. You are, you are feeling unsure of your standing in this relationship, in love, right? And this is because you've been doing all of this intense emotional labor, basically keeping things from falling apart, having them fall apart, and then putting them back together, holding them together, letting them fall apart. Like this back and forth is laborious and exhausting. And to your point about not wanting to be with somebody, or like feeling like the stability is maybe a little bit less appealing than the ups and downs. Two things. One, I think that maybe you have just had like the life experience you've had over the last year has changed your perspective. So all of a sudden you see that stable and you start seeing the cracks in that stable. You start seeing, like, it's funny that you even say that, this somewhat stable, I'm not sure I want it when it's somewhat stable, but you tell us a couple other lines that you're already seeing these red flag behaviors coming back and new ones, this stability, this quiet period, right? The period, it all of a sudden after a year, man, time is the best teacher, right? Like time and perspective is just the best teacher. And now DC, that stable period is it's the calm before the storm. So of course now that stable period is not the honeymoon romantic period that it was maybe around the holidays or your anniversary, because now you see it as instead of like oh my God, we finally plateaued. No. It's an incubator, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. That is such a good point. Like the idea that the stability, I bet that stability with another person where it's actual stability would actually feel really good. Right. But like what your experience is not stability. It's just a silence about all of the problems that are existing and that you're not talking about. Right.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Like that doesn't feel good either. Like that's not actual stability. That is just a communal decision to not talk about the bad things that are happening.
Yeah. And I want to take a moment to just to acknowledge just a universal acknowledgement of how hard it is to be a human and how hard it is to be a human in your early 20s, because you are newly independent, hypothetically, right? You are potentially in or out or just out of like an academic structure, right? Or maybe you've been out of school for a while or whatever. But like, I was just talking about this with somebody the other day, that the pipeline of going to high school and then sending many students to college, right? Or into a job right away, or into the real world even. Let's not even talk about academics, right? Just like sending young people out into the world to be young adults, right? It is a relic of the time when, you would be 12 years old and go work at a factory, or 14 years old and all of a sudden you are the head, the man of the house, right? And you're running the land or whatever. It's a relic of an older time. But now that we understand like brain development more, and now that we have this other weird stepping stone society, it's still very wild to me that we're supposed to decide everything about our future, like in college, We're supposed to know what we want to do. We're supposed to be able to somehow maintain a healthy relationship, being given no tools. Like none of us are born knowing how to be in relationship with other people. And some of us, a very few of us, are lucky enough to witness a healthy relationship within our parents or in our guardians or our family or whatever. But even then, our perspective of it doesn't always translate to taking those tools into our own life. Like, we are just so fucking clueless, and that's not our fault. And so I just want to say that because we're pointing out some really heavy, really real things about this relationship, but we've been there, right? And we've been there, and we did the exact same thing because we didn't know better. We didn't know how. We don't know how to do something better until we do it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just want to put like some like empathy, love out into the world. That relationships are so hard, and it's hard when you're discovering what does it mean to move through the world with another person, not just yourself, right? Like, fuck.
No, for sure. And I also think on top of that too, queer relationships also, right? Like, even if you growing up, right? Like, if the only example of what you see is a heterosexual relationship, those tools that are in use in heterosexual relationships don't work for queer people, right? Like, those values and those things that we look at either don't feel like they apply to us or don't feel like they're going to work for us. And that makes it even more challenging to figure out how to be in relationship with people when we've had absolutely no examples of it from the people around us or from the media. And so, like, it's just like a double whammy of how difficult it is to learn how to be in relationship. And also, like, you just got to learn, right? Like, you learn how to be in relationship with people by being in relationship with people and by asking your two queer best friends on a podcast about what you should be doing. That's us. Yes.
But let me tell you what, though, you know who can perpetrate toxic masculinity like no one else? Lesbians. You know who I'm talking about.
I do know exactly who you're talking about.
Anyway, we all can, right? We can all perpetrate the systems of oppression that oppress us.
Toxic behavior, abuse exists in queer relationships, and it doesn't matter if both people are of the same gender, if both people are of different genders, it does not matter, right? Like, abuse and toxicity can exist in any type of relationship. And it's important for us to recognize that, because it's important for us as queer people to understand that, like, we also can be part of this, and we also can come up with some of our own solutions to it. And what I love about the queer community is that I feel like because we are all the islands of misfit toys, like, we all sort of question the sort of heteronormative standards for relationships, means that I think that we are even more well equipped to be able to question some of those toxicities, question some of those ingrained things, and say, like, we don't want that anymore. Like, we already said no to heterosexuality, so, like, I'm also going to say no to toxicity. Like,
I really love what you're saying and disagree with it wholly. I love what you're saying because I want that. Like, I hope that for everyone, especially young queer folks, right? I just know my relationship to toxicity has been so arduous and, like, hard. My independence from toxicity has been so hard earned that I wish I was like, you know what, I'm queer, so I'm just gonna be like, fuck you. You know, like,
I'm not saying that's the reality. I'm saying
I know.
Aspirationally, like, we are as equipped, like, we are more equipped because we have the ability to question what other people have taught us about what relationships should look
and what
like,
they look
right?
like. Yes, totally. I love what you said. I haven't lived it. How about that?
Yeah. Well, and I think part of it is because we're taught that, like, well, I'm dating a woman, so, like, a woman can't have toxic masculinity. And it's like, no.
Yeah. Or any toxicity.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, totally.
It's like right?
Okay. So DC, obviously you have sparked, I love this conversation. It's so good to be not good, that's the wrong word, but, like, it's good to be reminded, of what these types of relationships look like. I don't know. It's just, I'm really enjoying this conversation. It's resetting some stuff in me too, to remind myself of, like, what I don't want to foster, what I want what I wish for all of our listeners and for you, DC, how do you break up and not get back together? I'm gonna throw it back, and I'm gonna say you need to go no contact.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to do this forever. And you're not. Well, okay, yeah. So Sam is nodding. If you can't see us,
forever.
But what I'm saying is, like, you don't have to decide forever right now. Right now, you have to decide that I need space from this person because I do not see this love as a love that is safe and sustainable for me. So I'm going to decide that I want 4 weeks, no contact. Right. And I know that seems so harsh to people, and I know that's very hard, but you have already proven to yourself that you cannot be trusted to leave the door open, right? Mm-hmm. You can't like crack the door.
For sure. Which also is like why I think
a forever block.
A forever block is more appropriate in this case, right? Like your relationship with this person is just really toxic. It like hands down, like I'm not gonna beat around it. Like this is like, there are so many different elements of toxicity in this. And I think you know that, right? Like this is why you wrote in, like you can identify that your partner isn't showing up in the relationship in the way that you want her to. And you are also not showing up in this relationship in the way that you want to, which is really, really challenging.
Yeah.
And I think that toxicity in relationships, this like high of when everything is great, it's the best experience of my life, has the same effect on our brains as drugs do, right? Like
100%.
Right. And so I think what you need to do is you need to break this addiction to this person by going cold turkey and saying, this is where it ends, right? Like, I'm not going to go back to this person because one time, right? Going back one time is going to set off my addiction once again. And I'm not going to be able to do it, right? Like having any contact with this person is going to just bring me down that same road into this toxic relationship that you have now been in, I don't remember, 4 times, 3 times, right? Like,
yeah.
And so I don't think you need to say, I need to cut this person off forever, but I think you need to go in the same way that you go into addiction by saying day by day, I am not going to contact this person today, right? Like I'm going to set that intention to say, I don't need this person in my life. And I know it's really hard because you have developed so much empathy and love for this person, but this person can't be in your life anymore. This person is harmful to you, and you being in this person's life is harmful to them too, right? Like it's a two-way street at this moment, right? Like you are not helping this person. Like I know that's really hard to hear, but it's also like, because I've been in the situation where I'm like, I'm the only person helping this person. I'm the only person that can save this person. Having me in their life is making them at least better. And that was not the case. Having me in their life was enabling them to do things that were awful to people, awful to me, right? Like
awful
doing
to
like
you. Yeah.
Being in their life allowed them to continue the behavior that was making their life so fucking miserable, right? Like, and I had to step back and say, like, I'm not going to be this person for you anymore. And I don't know where that person is right now. I hope that they're doing better, but me being in their life wasn't helping them. Me being in their life was just offering them an excuse to and a person upon which to put all of their awful behavior.
And I know this might seem not harsh. DC, we are echoing what you wrote us, right? You know this. You just haven't used these specific words. And I want to call out, I want to like gently point to the fact that you say we're not back together technically, but we talk and act that way, and we've established that we are exclusive.
Yeah, like you can't be not together and exclusive.
DC, I love you, and I want to say you are on the path to doing this all over again. And I know that it might feel as though you're being incredibly cruel and selfish to tell this person who you have love for that you can no longer be who you are to them now. And that you're going to choose a healthier, more stable relationship with yourself, right, than staying with them in this unhealthy space that might feel very selfish and hurtful, but it isn't, right? Mm-hmm. This is not a hurtful thing. This is you discovering what you want to foster in your life. And we've humanized your partner a lot. And I just want to say too, like, I want to continue that and say, like, she is hurting and she is on her own journey. Even though you guys are not together right now, you're on your own journeys, and you have a choice right now to decide where this journey goes, right? She's on one and you're on the other, and you're parallel right now, but it's been very painful. It's been very unstable, and it's been very toxic. Mm-hmm. So you can make the choice of moving your path off to a different way and letting hers figure out her own, because she's already doing it. She's just acting out. She's hurting you. You're enabling each other. Mm-hmm. We're not telling you anything you didn't know internally is all I want to say.
For sure. But that's also the purpose of this podcast. It's just like, yeah, you need someone to say it directly to you.
Just break up.
Yeah, right. The name of the podcast.
Yeah. Yes. We love you so much, and we believe in you so deeply. I believe in you, douche canoe, if you get into another 4 toxic relationships, right? Mm-hmm. Because it takes us a long time to unfold into who we're meant to be. Becoming is a long process, right? It's a forever process. And it took me so many relationships to become the person I want to be in relationships. And it'll take another person 1 relationship and all of these things. And spoiler alert, I'm still becoming that person every day. Just like the stupid accountability about like not taking out my feelings on my girlfriend.
Mm-hmm. No, that's real. Fiance.
Okay. So did we cover everything we want to cover?
I think so.
Yeah.
I just
DC, we love you.
We love you.
Please, know that is 100% genuine.
Absolutely. And just know that we know how difficult the situation is, and that we're being tough because we think you need to hear it, but it's not because we don't know how hard this work is, right?
Yeah.
It is incredibly difficult to be in this type of situation. And my heart goes out to you to say, yes, this is really difficult, and you deserve better than this.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. We love you.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone, that brings us to the end of this episode. At the end of every episode, we like to set you up with something that we think you're really going to love. This week, we want to set you up with, we call it the blind date. This week, we want to set you up with.
A little off script. It is an album that dropped yesterday. I already shouted out some of the songs like a month ago, but it is the Chicks, formerly known as the Dixie Chicks, put out their first album in 14 years yesterday, called Gaslighter. And y'all, like, okay, I'm just I've always been a fan of the Chicks. They're very nostalgic to me. But so that's one reason why I'm suggesting it. But I think if it was just my nostalgia, if it was just like my love for the Chicks, I don't know if I would suggest this album. But the whole album is so empowering and so beautiful and so painful. It's all about one of the main singers' divorce and their relationship, and so it's all pain and grit. And if you're going through a breakup, it is such a good album.
Yeah, seriously.
Right? And it's everything you need to hear, from the anger, from the sadness, to the like, just let me go, let me be free, to the self-reflection. It is the country / pop version of Lemonade to me. Although, I mean, like, Lemonade's up here.
Lemonade is like...
No. You can't compare Lemonade to anything, so forget.
Put it in a museum, because that is like a timeless work of art.
Yes. Forget I said that, and I'm currently writing a handwritten letter to Beyonce to apologize right now.
Like, I am so sorry.
Beyonce, I am so sorry. But in the same essence, right, a whole album about a relationship and infidelity, all of these things. It's just such an empowering breakup album. And I listened to it in the car today with the windows down, and all of a sudden I was 18 and clueless and, and singing along really loud. And then in the next moment I was 34 and I was still clueless, but it's a great album. So it's called Gaslighter and it's by the Chicks. You can find it where you find your music.
I love that. I was actually really glad when they changed their name to the Chicks, because that's what my dad always called them. So it was just
I love that.
It was like, oh, I'm so glad that we've embraced this thing that my dad used to do.
That's so cute.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening and for joining us on this live stream. It was exciting to be able to do this again. Just the amount of tickets that we sold was very exciting for us.
And thank you to everybody for celebrating our 2-year anniversary with us. Sam and I and Spencer love what we do, and we can't do it without all of you. And we think that our Just Break Up community, we love what we do, but even more than that, we think our Just Break Up listeners are really special. And I'm sure all podcasts think that about their listeners, but not all podcasts are as sappy and sentimental as we are.
Yeah. That's real.
I'm not really sure if Joe Rogan gives a fuck about his listeners.
You never know. I don't know him personally.
I'm just being... That was a judgmental statement. Okay, continuing.
All right, everyone. You can like us on Facebook and you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Just Break Up Pod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
That's right. Please remember to leave a 5-star rating and review, and consider supporting us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you will get an additional bonus weekly episode. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod. This literally keeps the lights on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need 2 random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Original music, recording, editing, and producing by our good friend Big Cats, aka Spencer, who texted me while the show was going on and said, I just Amazon Primed you a new mic cable. 10 minutes into this show. That's what a good producer is.
Absolutely.
Love you, Spencer, and love all your labor to make this show happen. Make sure to check out his podcast, the What If Podcast. And remember, it may not feel like it, but you can always start again. Today is a new day. And this moment is a brand new moment full of opportunity for your most authentic self. Just because you used to respond one way or act this way doesn't mean that is your destiny. You can always find new tools, new work, new path, new choices, new you. And if all else fails,
just break up.